All right, all phones on silent. Okay, councillors, it's gone 4:30, so I'll officially open the meeting and firstly pay my respects and acknowledge the custodians of where we meet, the Ngunnawal and Wiradjuri people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We have it's not an apology for the meeting. Councillor Flannery has contacted me and he's running approximately 30 minutes late due to some machinery being bogged, so he will be here. Housekeeping for the staff and councillors, and we have visitors in the public gallery. We're back to nearly being normal. In the event of the emergency exit, proceed out the twin doors to your right through the front door and on the footpath waiting further instructions. Next item on the agenda, 3.1, is the live streaming of Council's meeting. It's been live streamed, recorded and published in accordance with Council's live streaming in Council meeting policy. So that's for any speakers in public forum, which we have none today, but we have a member of the public in the gallery, so you need to be aware that any speaking that's made and any comments that are made will be picked up and streamed. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviour and or comments. Item 3.2, public forum. As I say, we had no public forum, so we move over to apologies. I've mentioned that. Any other apologies? No other apologies? Thank you. We have a leave of absence request from Councillor Wallace that he be granted a leave of absence from this meeting. Moved Councillor Manchester. Seconded Councillor Rolls. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Next item on the agenda, councillors, is the expressions of sympathy. So if we could all be upstanding, please. We pause for a moment silent for the following: Paul Wheeler, Trevor Marchant, Beryl Coddington, Phyllis Summerfield, Blair Nance, Margaret Tuckfield, Linda Hearn, Graham McKenzie, William McDougall and Warren Martins. Thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda, councillors, is the confirmation of the minutes of Hilltops Council Ordinary Meeting 27 October 2021. Moved Councillor Manchester, seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour? Aye. Passed. Thank you, councillors. Unanimous. Takes me over to item 7, disclosures of interest today. Do we have any disclosures of interest around the table?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I may have a disclosure of interest in regards to development applications. Again, there's no name attached to the development application number, so I'm not entirely sure, but I think it is.
Thank you for that. Move on. If there's no other disclosures of interest. Mayoral report. Mayoral minute. There's no mayoral minute. My diary is there, councillors. A couple little changes. I didn't make the LEP committee meeting due to some circumstances. There's also one there that was left off that I forgot that I attended the candidate meeting in BOOROWA with the other candidates the other night. So besides that, I think it's all there. If anyone's got any questions on that, if not, I'd ask someone move that we accept that. Move Councillor Horton, thank you. Seconded Councillor O'Connor, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Takes me over to councillors' reports. You'll have some listed there for Councillor Armstrong, Horton, O'Connor and Councillor Rolls. Councillor Armstrong, would you like to speak to those or?
No, Mr Mayor, as provided.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. They're self-explanatory.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Same, thanks, Mr Mayor.
And Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to fill everybody in a bit on the level crossing safety live stream that was in Grenfell, and I was more than happy to represent Hilltops, and it was good to see all the surrounding councils had sent representatives as our MP Steph Cook presented the petition for safety at railway crossings, and that affects us all, and I look forward to Hilltops Council supporting further moves in this direction. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls. So that leaves me with Councillor Manchester.
Sorry, minutes, meetings at minute, please.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Meetings as minuted.
Thank you. Comes around to Councillor Stadmiller.
Meetings as minuted, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Have someone move and second that they be accepted. Move Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor O'Connor. All those in favour? Aye. Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Takes me over to item 11, Community Recognition Scheme. Do we have any? Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like two, please. The first is to acknowledge retiring councillor Chris Manchester for his contribution and service to the community and local government. Chris has served as a councillor for 34 consecutive years between 1987 and 2021, and as mayor for 16 of those years, and was also on the Hilltops local representative committee while we're under administration between May 2016 and September 2017. And the second one is to acknowledge retiring councillor John Walker. John has served as a councillor for 17 years and as mayor for 3 of those years. And thank you for your contribution to the community and local government.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Are there any other community recognitions? I have one, if no one else has one. And we'll move them as an item, I think, together. On the news that came out today in regard to a former BOOROWA resident being named the New South Wales Police Commissioner, the first female police commissioner in history, Karen Webb. What even makes that even closer to home, had a bit of research done for me, and thank you to the staff member who did that. Her father, Frank Keith, worked for the BOOROWA Council, and he designed a lot of the parklands and duck pond at the BOOROWA Recreation Park, and he's actually got a memorial plaque at the park behind the chambers. So there's a fair bit of family history there from the BOOROWA community, and to achieve a post as esteemed and as high as that is, as she's quoted, is a great honour. And I'd like to be able to, on behalf of council, send off a letter of recognition to her also, and a great achievement. So with that one, and the Councillor O'Connor for our 2 long-serving and dedicated councillors who have given basically half a lifetime to local government. I also commend you both for your service to prior government, Councillor Manchester and Harden, and Councillor Walker to the prior Councillor Young, and for your contribution through Hilltops Council as well. I don't want to get all sentimental and we'll carry on, but well, yes, if you'd like to say something, you can.
Just check the number of years.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to...
I didn't do it. I didn't do the research, so we can check the years.
We can check the years.
Sorry, John, we will check the years. I got those from a staff member.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to comment if I could, please. With regards to Councillor Manchester, when I first became a councillor 8 or 9 years ago, Chris was the mayor of Harden Shire, and he impressed one thing on us all. I've never forgotten it. He said, when you leave this meeting, what happens in the meeting stays here. You go out, we're all good friends. And that was really good advice. Have an argument, have a disagreement, but when you leave that meeting, you stay good friends. And I've always thought about that all these years. So thank you for all you taught me, Chris.
Okay, councillors, could I have move and a second at those community recognitions? Councillor O'Connor, of course, and Councillor Ryle seconded. All those in favour? Councillor Flannery has joined us. We've just finished the councillors' Diaries, if you had any particular, Councillor Flannery, you want to throw in there, or we'll just roll on?
I don't have anything for the diary, Mr Mayor.
Meetings as minuted.
Sorry?
Meetings as
Meeting
minuted.
minuted.
Thank you.
I obviously missed the committee recognition. Yep, and
Put your microphone on, Tony.
I'd just like to add a few things to the councillors who are not standing again. Thank you for your time on council. It's always been good to engage, whether you agree or don't agree, and I think that was the essence of what Councillor Horton said. To two particular councillors, to John Walker, who I haven't had a lot to do with prior to Hilltops Council, has obviously served an extensive time on council, and congratulations for that. And particularly to Councillor Manchester, who spent, I think, 20 odd years with my father on council, and I have spent 12 years with Councillor Manchester. Thank you for the time you spent with me. We've had some disagreements. We've had a lot of agreements. You should always focus on the good, not the bad. But the disagreements have been very few. But to give 30 odd years, I'm not too sure exactly what it is, but it's probably 35 or 6, is a feat that that really, I think most people, well, 13 people have stood for the next term of council. It says it all, really. You want more people to stand, not less, but to give 35 years of your life, I think, is a great credit. The unrecognised side of that is the family that have been behind it. You don't stand for council or public office if your family don't support you. And I think to the families of those who have been here, particularly Chris and John, we recognise you for the support you've given to those two particular councillors and Councillor Walker. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. And while we're doing, I might as well finish it off now at this same point. And as we spoke to the two councillors who've done half a lifetime in local government, I also like to recognise Councillor O'Connor for her service on the inaugural Hilltops Council, and thank you very much for your participation in that council. There's also Councillor Wallace, who is not renominating, who served on the previous Young Council from 2012 to 21. So there's 9 years of his life being dedicated to local government. And to all my fellow councillors, some will be back just on sheer numbers because there's only 7, I think, new nominations. So at least 4 of the old crew have got to get back on to make up 11. So, but to the councillors who might miss out, or now the councillors who've served on this council, I thank you for your service. It hasn't always been a party. As I said in BOOROWA the other night, it's been a bit of a roller coaster for a lot of people, and some things have been said that shouldn't have been. And Councillor Horton, you're right, outside it should all be back to great friends, but sometimes that's hard to do. So I'd just like to acknowledge everyone who's taken part in the first Hilltops Council. We knew it was going to be tough. We knew it was going to be hard, and it's met our expectations without any problems at all in those regards. But thank you for that, and now we'll move on with our business paper. Thank you. No doubt people get that worded up for you, Deirdre. So item 12 is a general manager's report. So on that, the first thing I'd like to have a mover and a second to bring 2 late reports to council. Move Councillor Armstrong, second to Councillor Manchester. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. We'll do them at the end of the business reports. So we go to 21-288, annual report 2020-2021. Councillors, there's a report there and a recommendation there. Have a mover and a second to start with. Move Councillor Manchester, second to Councillor Armstrong.
Question,
Councillor Armstrong.
thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question to the General Manager. I do note that in the statutory component, the councillors' training in here is listed against the individual councillors. I noticed that in last year's that wasn't done. Is there a reason for that? Is that a statutory requirement? Or?
Through you, Mr Mayor. No, I can't recall, but it is a requirement that council expenditure be noted in the annual report and attributed to the said activity.
I know it's last year, the previous years, but there's $10,200 as in other in the previous years that wasn't, I guess. How does the community know what that $10,200 related to? I guess my concern is that this seems to be inconsistent from year to year in the way that the data is reported.
Look, I have to take that on notice, councillor, given that it is the previous year, and this annual report doesn't have comparatives, so I'll have to take that on notice.
I guess my concern is the mode of reporting and the basis of reporting. If it's if there's a legislative requirement that it be reported that way, and it's not, I guess then that's really what I want to hear. That it hasn't been, that it's inconsistent. More to the point, I'd like to know what the $10,200 for that's listed as other was, along with the other members of the community. I realise it's the previous year, but
Yep. I might be able to shed some light, Councillor Armstrong. I'm not too sure, and I'd have to ask, but now you've brought the matter up, I believe that funding may have been for a course that a councillor attended. I'm not too sure because we never really received a report on that course, and I could ask the Councillor Rolls a question directly. With the course you did, the director's course at the time, and given the scrutiny and being transparent with our community, and especially when the trip to China was scrutinised so closely by councillors when I visited Sister City, I just probably need to ask the question in regard to that course. Probably a couple of questions. One could be the General Manager as well, I suppose, but whether the course was completed and was successful. And I'm pretty sure at the time it might have been Councillor Flannery called for a report on that course, and we were assured we'd get a report. I'm not too sure if that report's been handed to staff, but it's definitely never came to council. So, Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was a report. Can I take that on notice, please, and give you an answer? That is what I would like to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Righto. Councillor Armstrong, so we'll leave it to the General Manager to decide. I think that at the time the course was quoted about $9,700 and there'd been some accommodation. I'm not too sure. Councillor wrote 3 or 4 days. I'm not sure how long the course ran for. But I think that may be the tally of the $10,200.
just to clarify, my issue is not with the training that was undertaken.
No. How it's
I
reported.
have no issue with that at all.
Yep.
My issue
Yeah,
is
right.
the fact that it wasn't disclosed as training for a particular particular councillor. It was simply listed as being other.
It's a bit unfortunate the current General Manager wasn't here.
No, I do realise that. I guess my concern is to ensure that there's transparency in reporting of those costs.
Yep. Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. So, any other comments in regard to the annual report from any other councillors before I put it?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the annual report. I in the absence of Councillor Wallace, and I won't go through it, but it's good to have an annual report. Some closer scrutiny might see that we're not doing a lot of the stuff. Well, I shouldn't use the word a lot. It would be good to that a bit more scrutiny was put through whether we're actually achieving some of the listed items that are in the report. I won't name anything in particular, but when I read it, I think it sounds lovely and flowery, a lot of it, and perhaps they're ideals that with where we're heading, I'd like to see a bit more focus on what we are aiming to achieve and what we will achieve, because motherhood statements, I think, given our cash flow position, probably have to disappear. But to the staff who put it together, congratulations. I would look, I missed the toing and froing on the councillor training. I certainly was, with regard to the director's course. I did believe a report should have come. I haven't seen it. I think a report should come. It's a pity if a report's gone to council executive, it needs to come to, that any training a councillor does, it should come to General Council. I hope that report has been completed. I was very against the expenditure on a director's course at the time, which I'm still in that boat, but we need to see funds spent, and the ratepayers need to know that it's been well spent.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. I'll just note that with the number of years you've been on local government, you've probably seen a lot of aspirational and flowery annual reports delivered with not a lot of cash in the bank by any council. So I agree with your point, but we need to be more direct on where we're aiming to go. Any other comments in regard to the annual report? If not, I had a mover and a seconder. I think I had a mover and a seconder, didn't I? Yes, I did. So I'll put that. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Takes me over to page 152, does it? Yep. The end of term 2017-2021 report. There's a report to council, another document and a recommendation. Move Councillor Walker. Seconded Councillor Horton. Thank you. Any commentary or regards to that report? I'll make one comment that I'm not blowing my own whistle neither, really, but it might sound like it. But when I looked at it, given the circumstances I've had with a little health issue over the last 18 or 19 months, it's pleasing to see that I managed to only miss 2 meetings. One general meeting when I was in ICU, and I missed an extraordinary meeting when I was in America. And wow, I wish I'd have been here that day. So that's the only comment I've got to make there. It's all there, pretty self-explanatory. I'll move it. All those in favour? Aye. And it's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Page 211 makes interesting reading. We're up to 21230 Hilltop Council Office Christmas close down. There's a report there, councillors, and a recommendation. Thanks, Councillor Manchester. Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour? And it's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 231, cash and investment report. It's there, councillors, and a recommendation. We got a mover? Councillor Flannery, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Horton, thank you. Questions regarding that report? No, I'll put that. All those in favour? Yep, aye. Thank you, councillors. 21232, outstanding rates and charges and sundry debtors report. That's there in front of you, council, and its recommendation is to receive and note. Need a mover and Tony. Councillor Horton moved. Councillor Flannery second. Councillor Manchester.
Yeah, just
Sure, Manchester.
a couple of comments. It is disturbing that they link to outstanding rates and charges, which is 15% of it, which the high percentage is 4 months plus age. That should be correspondent, especially running so late for our cash. And the same with the water charges, is actually 33% of it is outstanding, is 1 to 2 years old. And then there's 70% in some debtors. I just want to ask a question on some debtors. Why there are so much outstanding grant money? Is that the funds that you have spent? Through you, Mr. Mayor, those grant funds would have been spent, and we'd be investigating those as to why they wouldn't have been paid, but you wouldn't be raising an account unless you've actually spent those funds.
Thank you for that. Any other questions in regard to that? No. I'll put that report. All those in favour? Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. 21233, carryovers from 2020-2021 and quarterly budget review, September 2021. There's a report there, council, and the recommendation is there. I'm going to move in a second to start with. Councillor Horton, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Manchester, thank you. Have any questions in regard to that report? Councillor Flannery.
A couple of questions. There's the
microphone, please, councillor.
Sorry, apologies. The first 3 grants, are they to be carryovers. We've lodged our LEP, the Aboriginal Heritage grant. Is that money to be spent, or how, given we've lodged the LEP, how is that to work? The Crown Lands Management grant, was that part of the trial process of conversions, or could we get some?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll pass to the Director of Planning.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the LEP funding is also for additional studies or plans. In the carryover money that is put there will be looked at for finalising or reviewing and preparing our development control plan, as well as other settlement plans within the precinct, so we get good urban designs in around our towns of the new urban release areas identified as part of the LEP, so there is consistency there. The Heritage Grant funding one, that is a carryover for this year and also for 2022-23. It's a 2-year biannual program.
The comment says study to be completed by the end of 2021-22 budget, so that's expectation when the LEP comes back, because some of that work wasn't completed as part of the LEP. So is that for consultants? Is that for us to do ourselves, or?
It will be for consultants, project management internally, and engagement of externals. We don't have the resourcing to be able to do all the design control drawings and as such for the development control plans that would be required.
Thank you. And the Crown Lands Management Grant, what does that relate to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Crown Lands Management Plan of Management is a grant that we received to do some plan of management on Crown reserves, and that deadline has been extended till the end of 2022. So we will be delivering that work. We are busy getting scope together so that we can deliver that work, and that's why it's been rolled over.
So is that any particular reserve, or the Red Hill Reserve, or?
Part of the scoping is we're looking at either targeting particular reserves and having a general plan of management for reserves that are similar. So that body of work is still being undertaken.
Thank you for that, Director. Thank you. Councillor Rolls.
Mr. Mayor, can I just make a comment on that? I think what Councillor Flannery is referring to too, I think I'm right in thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the new Crown Lands Act of 2018, I think, all Crown Land reserves have to have a plan of management. We have to have that.
Yep, that's right.
And that's what that is for.
Yep, that's what we're talking about. Yep, correct. Councillor Armstrong.
Just in regard to the $45,000 grant for the planning portal, what aspects of the planning portal are not yet integrated that we would spend that $45,000 on?
The $45,000 for the planning portal, we've looked at an API to link in between how we receive the data from the planning portal into Tech1 and transferring the information straight into Tech1. We're also doing some work around the imagery associated with the department's imagery and our own imagery, so we can work in there so our planning portal, the information can be linked to there. It's also a lot to do with the administration and just getting the training and everything around that associated with what the planning portal did to councils at that time, and improving our quotes and our accounting side as well to ensure that we can upload information to and from the planning portal into our own systems.
Thank you.
Just following up on that then, if the API is developed locally, council owns the intellectual property of that API, or is that going to be developed by a software vendor who's going to own that?
There has been technical issues with the API, as that the planning portal isn't in its final form at the moment either. So there's been some concerns around the API. It is being done by one particular company who's identified the market for that and is sort of capturing it there. So they're working directly with the department. It is a more feasible process at the moment. I don't know about what it will be in the long term, but the department have compensated that by giving us a grant funding for that work.
Just for those shearing contractors in the room, the API, what's the API? Please.
It's a programming interface that allows data from one data set to integrate with another data set.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Clear as mud. Righto.
I am an IT.
So I just have that.
IT counsellor.
A programming interface, I gather. You can work that one out.
Councillor Stadmiller's got a question, I think.
Just a question for the General Manager. I recall at the last meeting we weren't going to be employing any more consultants, and that was part of a resolution that went through, but it was just mentioned that we were going to be employing consultants.
I think your statement's incorrect, Councillor Stadmiller. I'm pretty sure no one said we were never going to employ further consultants. I think there's going to be a close look at the number of consultants that are used and the costing of those consultants, but I don't recall ever seeing anything anywhere that said we were never going to employ consultants again. Is that correct, General Manager, or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the comment that I made is it is necessary to engage consultants and contractors when we do not have the skill set within council for the network necessary. That's the main driver behind any use of consultants and contractors, and this would be an example where we don't have the IT knowledge.
Sure.
Thank you for that.
Mr. General Manager, I just recall the wording immediate freeze put on it. If you could read the resolution for me, again, I'd have full clarification then as to what we are doing with consultants.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the immediate freeze is in relation to recruitment. In relation to contractors and consultants, we were going to look at the costings with a view to how we may be able to utilise internal resources.
Actually, I think I call a point of order at this
Thank
stage.
you for that,
We're
Mr.
off
General
track.
Manager.
Councillor Stadmiller, we're off the track of what the item that is in front of us, and we're going to move in a second. Are there any other questions in
motion of
regard?
dissent against the chair, please.
Councillor Stadmiller wants to move a motion of dissent against the chair. On what grounds and under what point of their code of conduct are you calling the motion
Mr.
of
Mayor, you're
dissent?
attempting to stifle debate on language used by a director to describe what we're doing with consultants, and I'm seeking clarification. I don't believe I've been provided that yet. Then you're trying to move on.
There's a motion of dissent. All those in favour of that motion of dissent? Those against that motion of dissent? Sorry, but I thought I'd call it for you anyway. Sorry, Councillor Councillor Stadmiller. On that note,
Mr. Mayor, I
Yep.
do have a couple of other questions.
Okay.
I was
We'll move on.
going to address it later when we dealt with the report into Roberts Park lighting and pool, but given it's listed here, this is probably the appropriate place. Councillor Stadmiller could probably correct me, but we called for reports into Roberts Park, and I thought the Murrumbula Creek upgrade. There is a report into here regarding Roberts Park. I've had a number of phone calls over the last couple of weeks. Well, I should say for months, but the last couple of weeks in particular, I've had a number of phone calls about Roberts Park and where it's up to. There's a number of issues there. It was addressed at the last meeting by Councillor O'Connor. There is no play equipment at Roberts Park. Now, apart from the fact, at Murrumbula Creek, apart from the fact that this program is horrendously behind time, way beyond our dates for achieving the work as per our grants, and I've asked for details a number of times on when the grant money needs to be expended. We have never seen anything. Again, given people get offended easily, I'll be careful about what I say with my language, but it's not acceptable that playground equipment get pulled out of parks and we have no timeline that we have seen for the replacement of it. It is simply not acceptable. I've railed about the fact that there are no projects completed in Harden. If you're not going to do a project, don't go and pull the old stuff out. I mean, why do the local community have to ring me? One father in particular rang me last week and he said, my wife works in Cootamundra, and she said, Daddy, why don't we just move to Cootamundra where there's decent playgrounds? I mean, how appalling is that? So either put the old playground equipment back or put the new stuff in, because it's not acceptable. And that's the politest way I can put it. There are other words I'd like to use.
Thank you, Councillor. You've been very restrained. Thank you. I think that's been noted and it's been mentioned before, so I'm sure it'll be noted again. So,
Completely agree.
would anyone staff like to take that on notice or answer it now? We'll get back to doing the procedure. So it's taken on notice, I'd gather, and
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add something to Councillor Flannery. That we had $3 million, 4 or 5 years. Councillor Flannery, Councillor O'Connor and myself were on that committee. I know I left it after about 18 months with the director we had running the show, and I think the other councillors did too. But $3 million, 100,000 later on was taken for a hall for a very fine gentleman, Brian Dunn, who passed away, and he had a collection of army memorabilia. And we, after many requests over the years, he had a double garage full of this beautiful equipment. We decided to make a hall for him to put it in. $100,000 was allocated. That nothing's happened that I'm aware of, and that's 4 years ago. It may be closer to 5. The Mooramoola Creek. We had a nag in this committee, a nag at the director, told us all this rubbish here to be done in June. Just all we wanted was the toilets so people could see we were doing something. There was nothing done. Eventually we got toilets months and months after he said we would get them. And the councillors, including myself, would tell the people, oh, you'll have toilets here in 6 weeks or 2 months. Just rubbish. We just need to know when it's going to start. I think at our last meeting we were told it would be done next year, 2022. And I hope that is the case, because that money's been there for a long while. And if I was a state government parliamentarian and Hilltops wanted to grants for something, I'd tell them to get lost. They get the money and they don't spend it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. On that note, I might move that item. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Councillor Armstrong, do you have a question before?
Just one question to the General Manager. Just in regard to the Technology One remediation, I note that it's actually got a negative $15,871. And does that mean we're going to get a cheque back from someone, or perhaps that explanation might also fit with the Barrangong Bridge widening, which is a negative $25,000 in round figures, and also the Safer Roads program, which is a negative $144,000.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's actually an accounting reconciliation, but I will pass to the Manager of Finance to give that more detail.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's a transfer that took place in the March quarterly budget review, and this is now the reconciliation of that to bring it into line with the funding. In that particular instance in March, we would have over-transferred those funds when we've actually done more work in the 2021 year. This is to align that program.
So will these costs be moved back to last year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, those costs are actually in that year.
And they are accounted for in the current financial statements?
They will be.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor, and thank you, Simon. All right, I'll put it now. All those in favour? Again, it's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. 21-234, development application stats for October 2021. They're there, councillors, and there's a recommendation that we receive and note them. Moved, Councillor Horton, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Walker with a question. Councillor Walker, to you. Put your microphone on, please, Councillor Walker.
For my own education, if I may, point number BO 20-0280, it talks about dwelling houses, stage development. For my own education, I say. One is primary dwelling for habitation. What other form would a dwelling take?
Through the Director of Planning Office.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we place on the description there what the applicant proposes. So we replicate what the applicant puts on the application form.
Thank you for that. Do we have any other questions in regard to item 234? If not, I'll put it. All councillors in favour? Thank you, councillors. Unanimous. Takes me to 21-235, the Local Heritage Fund 2021-2022. The recommendations there, councillors.
So moved.
Moved Councillor Stadmiller, seconded Councillor Manchester. Any questions in regard to it? No, I'll put that. All those in favour? Again, unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Rudolph Heritage Fund. Item 21236, and I've been asked to note an amendment to this, so I might hand straight to the Director of Planning to talk to that amendment.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification of the recommendation, where it says at the end of the recommendation or deemed refused, we have just noted concurrence refused by the Planning Secretary, just to ensure that it is clearly stipulated.
We can have that put on screen for your councillors if you'd like, I'm sure. Sorry, Deirdre. I should have asked first. Just a change, yeah.
Advance that a little bit, please, Deirdre. Yeah, you're doing it.
So in our business paper, it reads deemed refused. Director, councillor? Yes. And that's the change is refused by, concurred refused by the Planning Secretary. Is that correct? That's the change.
Concurrent, sorry. It should be concurrent.
If concurrent refused by the Planning Secretary. Thank you.
What do you mean by concurrent means at the same time? So you're saying that a variation of less than 10%, the General Manager, rather than bring it to Council, can have delegated authority to approve it. And it says all concurrent refused by Planning Authority.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. All 4.6 variations that are over 10% go to the department. So what this one is the department, so we have to seek concurrence from them to allow the 4.6 variation to be applied. So what we're saying there, if there are refused by the department, we can't overrule the department's decision. So basically it would be a mute report to council, even though we'd have to seek your recommendation for a refusal. So this way, once the department's already refused the application, we can just proceed and have the General Manager refuse that application by determination of council and have that resolution resolved quicker for the applicant.
Okay, so all
Is that-
councillors.
No? Bit confused?
Are we giving the General Manager delegated authority to approve variations of less than 10%? Is that the purpose of the clause?
The first bit, yes, 10% or less. Yep.
If the department refuses it, we have no recourse anyway.
Greater than 10%, no.
That's right.
Yep. It doesn't go to the department.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Like if it's state rules over Trump local, so I don't think there's in there. Really.
It would have to be, if it's greater than 10%, it goes to the department. So it would come to council to even refuse that application. We still need it to be determined by the council.
So the General Manager can't approve it anyway.
If it's based on this resolution, yes, we are giving him the delegated authority. So it doesn't have to wait 6 weeks to come to council for a decision.
Righto. Yeah, that's better. That's better now. Yeah. Councillor Manchester.
That's just confused a bit more. Is this saying that if it's less than 10%, the General Manager could actually refuse it too?
Works both ways.
Yeah, it works. So I just wonder whether that's what we really need, is that if it's less than 10% and we need it to come before council for approval or not, be passing that back on to the General Manager to do it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
Obviously, anything that has any element of contentious or otherwise, through the briefings, we bring it to it, and that this does not stop any councillor requesting any report to come to council anyway. As with any development application, usually it's less than, there is no more than 4 submissions. Staff can determine it. However, at various times, even through a short tenure here, councillors have said, look, we'd like to see that and have it debated. It comes to council, so it doesn't preclude anything coming to council.
Yeah, but further to that is that it could actually fly under the radar of councillors too, that if they don't request it to come to council, it flies under their radar, they don't see it. I'm not saying our current general manager would do it, but, you know, who's to know what could happen in the future if the general manager decides to approve or not approve a development because of this rule.
Well, I mean, through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, your hands, my understanding of this was to facilitate the speed of it for some variations that, you know, a variation of 1%, even a variation of 1%, currently we have to bring it to you. Director of Plan, do you have anything to add to that?
This report is piggybacked from comments made at the last council meeting where it was asked why a 1% report comes to council, why can't it be determined by council officers, and it is under our delegation that it has to come to council for determination unless it goes back or unless we can give the authority to the general manager. There is roughly any report that has to come to council for determination, you're looking at an additional 8 weeks of information to the applicant before a determination, and that can, if that's an approval, that can be quite a big difference on a development. And it's trying to get the speed of the applications out there, especially for where it's 1 or 2% approvals. But I do appreciate where you're coming from about the refusal side as well. But again, if it's a refusal, it is based on a merit assessment that are quite detailed and stipulated as well. So the councillors would need to have a very good reason why they would overrule a determination based on merit assessment.
Okay, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, thinking about it, I mean, I was the one that raised why we've got such a small, to include the words advisedly. I mean, I would be happy more, I can understand I'm supporting what Councillor Manchester says, but expressly grant delegated authority to the General Manager on the determination or to allow the General Manager to approve, I think would deal with that, but then other councils might have an exception where it might be approved and it's 10% and they didn't know about it. Perhaps we should add the words that any deemed or any delegated refusal or approvals be reported to council. You know, like in the section where it's got the development statistics, perhaps it should be approved under delegated authority by General Manager. So it's noted in the, if it's out, that notation occur in the development statistics, so that if we want to call that up, then we have the ability. Having said that, if it's a deemed refusal and approval is not such a problem, can it come back to council for subsequent approval?
Deemed refusal is based on the time period over the 40 days. The delegated refusal. Again, if it's by the concurrence of the planning secretary, it's more of just a heads up to the councillors for an approval. I think that what you're trying to say there, if we put a different table within the DA stats of all 4.6 variations currently under consideration, and the ones that we would recommend for nomination to the General Manager as per a delegated resolution of this one, that would also highlight to all councillors what ones are there, and if you want to bring one up, we can definitely bring that up. So it could be a very good management practice for that process.
Okay, so I can hear an amendment coming.
Well, I will move that amendment, whether it's a Part B or a Part 1A or something, that delegated authority, DAs approved under delegated authority be reported separately in the development application statistics, along with those approved by certified developers. Which is something that I think you can't do that.
No, through you, Mr. Mayor. Private certifiers can't approve 4.6 variations. It's only at council or the planning secretary.
I would like to see reported separately DAs approved by private certifiers, so that we know what's going through by private certifiers relative to council staff.
Councillor Rolls?
Yeah, 3 years, Mr. Mayor. I just want to ask a question. How often would this happen? That there's that less than 10% variation?
On average, I believe we're getting we're reporting to the department maybe 1 to 2 a quarter, but the previous quarter there were no 4.6 variations. So they are reported quarterly to the department. So roughly 1 to 2, but we are seeing an increase.
Okay, on that
Look,
note,
I'll leave it, just I won't add that additional point, but any DAs approved under delegated authority be reported separately from the DA. If I can get a second of that.
Yeah, now, before we go any further, Councillor Flannery has moved an amendment to the recommendation. It was moved and seconded. So the mover and the second are happy for that additional amendment to go in there?
I wasn't the second.
Oh, yeah. Mover was happy. If the mover's happy, that's all I need. The mover's happy, so that can go in there. Do we need that up on the screen, people? We're going to put on the screen that amendment so everyone knows what we are voting on.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Wright.
So if something is approved by an outside certifier, does that mean that it doesn't go to council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a couple of processes. There's what we call compliant development certificates, which we do report in, but they're done by quite often private certifiers. But also we have DAs, development applications, and at that time you don't necessarily nominate if you were going with council or a private external certifier. And then once the CC process starts and they start submitting their CC documentation, they identify if they want to go private certifier or council certifier.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak against the original motion and the amendment. I'll explain why. 2018, I think, Wombat, there were 2 lots of land. There was concurrence from the state government. A report came to council where the council staff didn't agree with the state government's recommendation. Council overruled that and allowed 2 lots of land to have dwelling entitlements placed on it. This is dealing with a clause 4.6 variation. It's not dealing with development applications. So if there's an issue with this general manager, the next one or the one after that, there is no right of reply for that applicant on a clause 4.6. So it puts us in dicey territory and we have to live with it. We live in the community. We continue to live here. Very dicey.
Thank you. Councillor Stadmiller spoke against the resolution. So we'll get back to process if that's the case. Would anyone like to speak for it before I put it?
Question,
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to the Director. The tsunami of planning reforms that DEPI are currently pushing out, along with legislation and changes in policy. What concerns me with this is that perhaps there are going to be some changes in some of those policies and some of that legislation, which may actually impact our LEP in such a way that this really will become unnecessary or potentially a millstone around our neck.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 4.6 variations, which common received here at Hilltops, refer to the subdivision of a smaller lot with a dwelling entitlement. In other areas, 4.6 variations can also include height of building, floor space ratios, gross floor areas, and other mechanisms to do with the height and structure of the building on that site. So we don't have that in our LEP, and it's highly unlikely the department, although I can't put hand on heart on that because it's a bit frightening what they are doing at the moment, but I can't see them amending the 4.6 variations because it gives that flexibility for council and the department to look at an assessment of a particular design that could work on an individual lot, which you can't do at a broad scale, such as the LEP at the time of when you're doing all that mapping and land use zoning.
I guess my concern comes from reading some of those changes today, and certainly some of the proposals in changing some of the SEPs are designed to speed up the process, the development process, and reduce the red tape. I guess my concern is that potential changes may actually render this muted.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that the red tape is going forward to speed up development, but not to mitigate good design, which still comes back down to that 4.6 merit assessment.
Even though there's now going to be legislation that relates to design specifically.
The place and design,
exactly,
yes,
yeah.
but it is a design improvement, not necessarily.
Thank you for that. Thank you, councillor. On that note, I'm
Mr.
going to
Mayor,
put this item.
Can I just ask a question, given I'm with you? 4.6, it was getting back to the original point that I made, that if the state government, or if it comes from state planning that they recommend against it, this simply is the delegation of the general manager to approve or otherwise. It doesn't preclude it from coming back to council for approval.
That's my understanding. Thank you for clearing that up for those that was my understanding also. So there's been good debate on it and some good points, and an amendment has been made, and the mover was happy with the amendment. So I'll now put the recommendation as it was reading on the board. All those in favour?
Connor,
You got 'em?
Manchester, Flannery, Ryan, Councillor Rolls. So
All right.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Those
5.
against? Councillor Walker, Armstrong and Stadmiller. That recommendation is carried. Thank you, councillors. Takes us over to 21237, 218/DA0014, Rural Residential Subdivision, 24 lots and new roads at 81 Isaac Road, Yarn. There's a report there, councillors, and the recommendation is that council grant consent to development application number 2018DA 00014 of lots 2151. I've got a mover in Councillor Manchester. Thank you, councillor. And the seconded Councillor Armstrong. And Councillor Manchester was first with a question.
Yeah, one is, have we got the authority under, being close to an election to actually approve this subdivision?
Yes, we have. Director?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, you do have the delegation, the authority to do that, because it was based on the submissions received at the time, and so it can come to council.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
So there's a number that you can't.
Through Mr. Mayor, the stipulation, there's three things, but I'll only talk to the one thing, is you can not approve any development application with greater than 25 submissions, or it would be deemed refusal if you did not make a determination. Those two stipulations, the minister can override those, but those two stipulations, so we didn't receive 25 submissions, and it's not in that, and it will be deemed refused if we don't do it now.
Thank you. Another question, Councillor Manchester?
Yeah, just one other. Through right throughout it, it's using the old young LEP of 2010. We've currently lodged our LEP. Doesn't that override it now? It doesn't.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, all LEPs stand until the current one is gazetted, and then that one will become in force. We can consider it, but it's not. Yeah.
Thank you.
I thought I asked a question some months ago about LEPs, and if it was part of my question related to some of the water studies, the water mapping and the biodiversity areas, and I thought I got a response which basically said if the position of our new LEP was such, then they must be considered, despite the fact they're not gazetted. Can I get confirmation of that?
Just similar to us, probably that's a lot broader than what I just mentioned, that we do look at the current Hilltops LEP, but if we're looking at the actual assessment criteria in the Gazette, we use the current objectives of the in-force LEP, which is the young.
Thank you.
We had a number of submissions, I think 70, 80, 100 on biodiversity mapping and groundwater vulnerability. I was, of course, concerned about the intrusive nature of those, but this seems to fly in the face of what council accepted with those studies.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Any other questions in regard to the report, or anyone want to speak for it or against it?
Question,
Councillor
Mr Mayor. Just with the deemed refusal, is that normally 40 days? Because it says here on page 313 that it was lodged on the 25th of January 2018. So has there been a back and forth for over 3 years? I'm just a bit confused.
To the Director.
Yep. Through you, Mr Mayor, on page 314, you can see the application process there where we received it on the 25th of January 2018. We did provide a report to Council to refuse the application at a point of time where we weren't receiving additional information. Council asked staff to go away and work with the applicant, which we have done so, and we had a good result in that we've been able to have an approval here today.
Thank you for that.
Do we have any details on the number of hollows there are in trees and the impact and so on with regard to superb parents?
Through you, Mr Mayor, on page 316 to 317, there is a short breakdown of what was included or the impacts of the BDAR and that were considered, but the actual specific number of hollows, but it does mention the 4 trees, mature trees that contain several hollows. So what that would mean, it would be within the detail of the actual report that was provided.
Thank you for that. Okay, councillors, no discussion in regard to that. I've been moving to seconder. I'd like to move that recommendation then. All those in favour? Hold their hands up, please, in favour. Thank you. Against? Against Councillor Flannery, Walker and O'Connor. Thank you. That is passed, councillors. Thank you. Sorry, Deidre, you got those? You're right. Thank you.
Gobsmacked, Mr Mayor, following the
Councillor
LEP.
Flannery, you've been on council a long time. You learn every day.
Some hands went up in one direction a couple of months ago.
Next item on the agenda. One thing I'll say, councillor, I'm consistent. 21238, establishment of alcohol-free zones in BOOROWA. There's a
Move the recommendation.
Move Councillor Armstrong, second to Councillor Walker. All those in favour? Is that unanimous? Thank you, Councillor.
Actually, that just went a bit quick for me. Question for the General Manager on the alcohol-free zone.
Councillor Stadler, the floor is yours.
Are there any movements by shopkeepers or owners to establish outdoor wine bars and such at the moment before council?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, there is an application. It is around the corner nearer to the roundabout, which isn't included in this particular map.
Thank you. No other questions, I'll move that. All those in favour? We did that, didn't we? Yeah. We did. You're all for it, Councillor Stadler? Is that affirmative? Well, the next item, we'll move over to page 2360, Councillor, and the item is 21239, Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program nominations. Were you with us, Councillor? Take that as a yes? You're right, yeah? I'm just making sure you're ready.
I'm fine, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
On the page.
Thank you. 360. Thank you, Councillor Walker and Councillor Manchester. Do we have any questions or comments in regard to item 21239?
Question.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A question to the Director of Infrastructure. The $1.2 million for drainage works on Wickham Lane. I'm just wondering, were drainage works for the CBD of Young ever submitted for this program, given that there's anything up to 3 foot, 36 inches, 0.9 of a metre of water that runs down the back lane behind this building at times. I'm just wondering whether council's priority should actually be to stop the business CBD area and the businesses in the CBD from flooding on a regular basis, rather than perhaps vacantly on Wickham Lane. So I'm just concerned as to how the process that Wickham Lane came into this list. Can we get some background on that, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor, with regards to the flooding that does occur in the CBD of Young, that has been covered with a flood study, and out of the flood study there were recommendations to do some detention basins which would prevent that from occurring, and that is a separate project that we're busy with. We have done the design of the first 3 basins, and the first basin is now being progressed with purchase of land and construction. So it's being addressed under a separate flood study. The Wickham Lane study, and I don't have all the details around that. If you want to have more details, I'll ask Mr. Crisp to come here to answer. But my understanding is that Wickham Lane does contribute to a lot of flooding there, and it does need to be addressed with the significant development that happened out there.
Could those funds, those $1.2 million, be utilised in the CBD drainage remediations?
I'll hand over to Mr. Crisp through you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just want to add CBD works, that's also co-funded under OEA, co-funded, so there's some grant arrangements. That's right, so co-funding. Yeah. I don't take it on notice as to how we could supplement that 1.2 back into the CBD.
I've got the same concerns that Councillor Armstrong's talking about with this flood plan management and the retention basins that we're working on, and the continual flooding that comes down through the main business houses in the main street of Young. I'd like to make sure before we go planning on spending $1.2 million at Wickham Lane, and I acknowledge there's some work needs to be done there, but I do think the priority would be the business centre of Young, and if that money could be allocated to that other side of the works, I think it'd sit much more comfortable for myself. Councillor Armstrong, I didn't mean to.
No, Mr. Mayor, I support your position. That my concern is that there will be considerable remediation works required to stop the flooding in the CBD of Young, and I'm uncertain that they are fully funded. Here's an opportunity for $1.2 million to be directed to that to considerably accelerate the program and effectively bring forward those works in terms of the detention basins and any supplemental drainage that is required. I don't want to see that opportunity, if that opportunity, I don't want to see that opportunity lost if that is indeed an opportunity. And that's the reason I'm asking this question now.
Mr. Mayor, could I move an amendment, because I note the concerns of those who are more cognizant of the issues around Young CBD. However, I do wonder whether this Wickham Lane work is work that perhaps should have been planned as part of the Millvale Road upgrade, and it may have perhaps become apparent that all the increased hard area with that industrial subdivision, the new work, that perhaps more water is actually coming down through that area than was originally realised. So I don't know that we should, sitting here, preclude Wickham Lane option. Could I move an amendment that we to Part B and add a Part D? So adopt the proposed project allocations for the local roads and community infrastructure Phase 3 as presented in this report, excluding Wickham Lane. C, delegated authority. Well, C become Wickham Lane and the CBD flooding issues be brought to a separate report. The $1.2 million allocated to Wickham Lane be brought to a separate report to council, along with alternate utilisation in the Young CBD area, and then D become the general manager, delegate authority to the general manager to execute all necessary documentation.
Thank you.
Question,
Mr. Mayor.
We'll get that put up on the screen.
Yeah. Could I just speak about Wickham Lane? $1.2 million has been allocated to Wickham Lane, and it should be spent there. But all the years I've lived in Harden, I have had letters, people coming to my home about the flooding in Wickham Lane. And I've been down there and looked at it, and I'm sure Councillor Manchester knows more about it than anyone in this room. It floods through their yards, goes into their homes in some of the places. There's been people complaining about it for lots of years. And if it's allocated to them, I concur that it should go there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hood, and I'm pleased they've called you and complained to you, because I've only lived here 21 years, but I haven't had a complaint from that area. But anyway, it must be taken to the point to you. So, but anyway,
Just clarification
but I'm not being flippant about that. I think he's got the wrong name. I'm not being flippant at all. I'm pretty sure he's got the wrong road. Because Council Manchester's been receiving those calls. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I take back what I said. It's Wickham Lane in Young. I'm talking about Wickham Lane in Harden. So I do apologise.
That's okay. We resolve that matter. Thank you. Okay, Deirdre.
I have a question.
Councillors, bear with me. Councillors, before I go to the board, Councillor Walker's got a question.
Yeah, if I may, in a report coming later, and I'd like clarification. Young Stormwater Basin, apparently the design is completed. Is that assumption right?
Who'd like to speak to that, please? Yeah. Thank you, Director.
Young stormwater design. Yep. So the design for the stormwater basins 1, 2, and well, it's 1, 4, and 6. So 3 of the basins have been designed. We only received enough money for the design of the second 2 basins. The first basin we've received co-fund. Well, we had to co-fund, but we received funding from OEH, and that basin is designed, and that basin will be constructed. So the program that's indicated there is for the first basin. The design is there, and we always have funding agents say, well, don't apply for funds if you're not shovel ready. So the 2 designs that are there that were paid for by funding money with some co-contribution from council is ready for when we can apply for more funding.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my concern is if they're planning and it's on a plan and the land hasn't been, needs to be a land acquisition yet, and this is coming further up down in the meeting. I'm not in favour at all changing funding around when it's firstly plans in place to get things done.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. We'll take that as speaking against the new amendment that Councillor Flannery has put up, and is the mover happy with those to be there?
All
of us, the Director would like to speak. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the nomination for this particular funding has to be provided by January, and I'm cognizant of the fact that there is the whole council election. We nominate it, and then there's a second round when, if we want to change any of the funding, we can do so. But the nominations for this amount of money that council has received, which is 3.25 million, the nominations need to be in by January. So just because this is the last council meeting where we can put this forward, we would like to go ahead with this.
This is another case coming to council after the horse has bolted out of the gate. This is something that I've spoken on, and I'm not being disrespectful to anyone. I've said it before. $3.2 million, and I recognise all the hard work staff does. When it comes to council, we want to change, amend something, it's too late. Councillors don't get a lot to do nowadays, and for any potential new councillors, we have one with us, operational is out of our area and we don't get a lot to say, but I'd like to have a bit more input into the spending of that money. So given that what
Question,
Director just
Mr. Mayor.
said to us, we might have to have a rethink about what's on the board.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Flannery.
Can we put Wickham Lane CBD floodworks, put a slash in there, $1.2 million, so that we can then, subject to a report, make the final decision?
Works for me, but I'll just have to get some clarification.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question for the Director. I'm just trying to assist the process here and mindful of what the comments have been. The end date for the lodgement is at what date in January?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is the second week in January.
Okay. On that basis, there is an extraordinary meeting of the new council on the 5th of January for Ode's election of the Mayor, Deputy Mayor, the 18-month part. Also at that meeting, it's an appropriate time to say it, the annual financial accounts for this year will be presented there, as long as the Audit Office does sign off on the 3rd of December, because you have to do it within 5 weeks. So just a question, I don't like to do this operational thing live, but we would be able to bring a report to that meeting to cover off these items. this additional information that's been requested and scheduling, I believe.
Okay, so on that note, Councillor Flannery, Councillor Walker was a mover and he's obviously not going to accept any amendments to the recommendation, as he said he didn't. Yep, no, that's correct. And so before I ask any further on it, Councillor Flannery, on your last thoughts, would you like to change any of that so we can put it to a vote?
Well, I'll move an amendment to the motion, so I needed a seconder for my amendment. But I would change that to, we'll have to drop C and we put, just reword C, delete C, and then it becomes Wickham Lane CBD Works 1.2 million to be brought to January meeting for final determination.
I'll second that.
Mr Mayor, I'm just wondering why in the report it says that Council was advised on the 19th of May. Just wondering whether there's been any advice to Council between the 19th of May and the 24th of November as to what the likely list of these projects would have been.
Sounds like it's been taken on notice, or Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd like to pass to Mr Crisp, because that report would have been prepared by him.
Thank you. Okay, I've got a mover and a seconder for what's on the board there now as the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment, raise the hand, please. Against? The amendment has been carried. It now becomes a recommendation.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to talk to the motion. I acknowledge Councillor Armstrong's points. I think when we're spending this quantum of money, we need to know what we're spending it on. I think we should get reasonably detailed plans rather than just commentary of what's proposed for both, so we get a good understanding of where the money is to be allocated and allowing us to make a considered decision on it, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Manchester?
Just a comment. We're spending a lot of money down there on this Temora Millvale Road, whatever you like to call it, Temora, on Millvale Road. We don't want to, what we don't want to do is move money away from, I certainly support the recommendation that we certainly should look at the two sides, but we've got to be careful that we don't create a problem down there with no money to fix a stormwater problem down there when we do all this new roadworks. That's what we need to be sure of.
And I'm pretty sure staff are very conscious of that matter as well, Councillor, and it's a very valid point.
So that if we need to be told if there's a problem that has come up as a result of prior improper planning, and this is our only opportunity of fixing it, that should be part of the report.
On that note, I'm going to put it. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 21-240, Community Consultation and Engagement Plan in the Waste.
So moved.
Councillor Stadmiller, seconded Councillor Flannery, I think that was. Yep. Any comments, councillors? No, everyone's all happy. I'll put that. All those in favour? Thank you. 21-241, Works Report. Moved Councillor Manchester, seconded Councillor Horton. Thank you. Any questions in regard to that report? I'll put it if not.
Just a question.
Councillor Armstrong.
A question to the Director. How long is Kenyu Road? The first one. How long is Coleman's Lane? What's the average cost per kilometre for maintenance grading? Kenyu Road, Coleman's Lane.
Coleman's Lane, sorry.
Coleman's Lane. That's correct. Coleman's Lane.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to Mr Crisp.
Mr Mayor, Kenny Road and Tuttle Lake, about 48 kilometres. Coleman's Lane, don't take on notice. In relation to maintenance grading, I might take on notice as well.
Thank you for that.
Just an observation. It would appear as though the full length of Kenny Road is about the 2 months has been graded, and that would include the seal section of it too. Would that be?
Through the Mayor, the October meeting area was still fine-tuning the requests, using some of this data. So that number is in error. The thought through grade figures is report through this month.
I guess my concern is that grading 28.4 kilometres of a road and 0.6 of a kilometre of a road doesn't appear to be a great deal of equity in terms of the community. Looking at the 2 months reports, it appeared to me as though the full length of a road had been graded when there was some significant number of kilometres that were actually sealed. I just couldn't quite work out how the seal road was being graded as well.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong, for pointing that out. That makes Councillor Rolls.
Correct me, Mr Mayor, if it's not where it should be. Can I just ask the staff how this present weather circumstance is affecting our roads?
Would you like me to answer that?
or perhaps I should phrase it too. How is council coping with it? Because I understand the load that is putting on the road, maintenance.
Very pertinent question, and it's not just this council area. I can tell you, go anywhere you want to drive, and that's a burden on everyone. But would staff, someone like to mention any in particular in regard to that?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, there is a lot of damage that has been occurring on our roads, and we do really need to wait for the wet weather to pass and for it to dry out so that we can understand the full impact. At the moment, and Mr Crisp, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the staff are trying to manage with the worst parts of the roads as we go through and try and deal with it. I know certain areas have been more significantly affected than others, and once we get the weather to end and the roads dry out, we can make a full assessment on it.
Mr Mayor, could I make a comment and a question for Mr Crisp? And I know the answer, we'll take it on notice. The amount of funding available under Section 94 of EPA funding for Kalangan Road, because there are areas of it that are breaking up significantly. I haven't seen a patching truck or repair truck along there for a number of years. I know we get limited VPA funding there. I guess I'm making a comment now. We get limited VPA funding there for the other councillors, but the truck usage exceeds the funding we get. But could we be advised of the amount of funding available for VPA? Because can it only be used on reseals, or can it be used on pothole patching? I will also make a comment about Kenyu Road. I've had a number of complaints during the year about Kenyu Road and the people who live down there. In fact, I think I won't mention names, but people will work out who it is, but someone said I'm transporting millions of dollars worth of horses down there and we haven't seen a grader for 5 or 6 years. So I don't know the extent of work's been done down there, but I guess they're all entitled to get their road done more than once every 5 or 6 years, which probably accounts for some of the work. And could something be looked at for Kalangan Road, please? Because we do have money available for that, which is set aside.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery, for that. Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just something positive and good news. The Director Infrastructure and Mr Crisp, the western side of Albury Street going into Harden from the cemetery down has been in a shocking way, all due to the recent rains. But I'm pleased to say tonight, when I drove out, the road was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. They've been working there for 2 or 3 days. So well done, Mr. Crisp, and well done, Mr. Infrastructure.
Thank you, Councillor Orton. On that note, I'll put that report. Oh, sorry, Councillor Stadmiller's going to.
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, just the fact that I've been paraphrased here with a question on page 386, where it states, question, current flood lighting levels at Roberts Park.
386.
Who is responsible and does the agreement articulate responsibilities? I was seeking an answer as to the legal responsibilities of either the club or the councillors to if an injury occurred due to poor lighting at Roberts Park. I just want to make that perfectly clear.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Riles had a question.
Through the Mayor, it was actually referring back to the roads and following on from my question about how you're coping with these weather events. And I'm just wondering what the forward planning is, because we're told that these weather events will occur more regularly and more often. So is that part of the forward planning of infrastructure and for the building and construction of roads that we're looking into the future, and especially with the ramifications of a changing climate?
So you're talking
or
climate
bigger,
change. Yeah.
bigger weather events,
I'm not going to
whatever
answer that.
you like.
Climate change is out of my degrees area. Way above my pay rate. Climate change.
Mr. Mayor, is there an answer to that question? Or?
I don't think there is. I think. Well, maybe the director might like to answer that. Yep.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as I said, the first thing that we're going to be doing is prioritising the roads. So obviously that is looking at a forward working schedule, whether we're going to look at changing materials of roads or anything, design of roads. That is a question that we can take under consideration when we're planning the future works.
Thank you for that. Councillor Flannery, do you have?
Yes, a couple of other things, Mr. Mayor. Basham's Lane, thank you for the response, but I also did note that I wasn't clear because there's no signage there as to where Basham's Lane ends and Old Monteagle Road starts. But clearly the staff have identified the causeway. Could we actually, part of that question was, could we get a costing on it? Because I don't remember it being part of budgets, which simply means I probably missed it. But there's extensive work took place there. I would have thought $300,000 or $400,000 was spent on that causeway. 90,000, is it? I must have missed that.
Yeah, it's in the report on the second page.
90,000, is that all?
It's on the second page.
Wow.
Yep, that's what I said.
I'm shocked. Okay, sorry, I missed that. Roberts Park lighting, I think I also asked a question on that Councillor Stadmiller raised, well, I think I raised it first, but I have asked privately of the director or the general manager, I can't recall, about alternate lighting, and I think I was told some light bulbs are being fixed or some additional light bulbs are going to be put in the existing posts. Is that the case, and when would be the question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have got an interim solution, which is that we have purchased lamps for those existing posts. We are struggling to get stock out of Queensland. They were supposed to arrive on Friday and they still haven't arrived. We have a local electrician who's got all the necessary paperwork to be able to undertake the work safely. It is really waiting on the light bulbs, the lamps. So as soon as those lamps come, we spoke to the electrician today and he said he's still waiting for that stock to come out of Queensland. So when we get that, we will do the work.
Okay, because I'll get another phone call tomorrow night after touch saying lights haven't been done this week, Councillor Flannery.
Councillor Flannery. Okay.
Question,
Councillor Armstrong, before I put it.
Just going back to Councillor Stadmiller's, the response to Councillor Stadmiller's question there, I do note that the response is there are no agreements in place between Hilltops Council and any turf-based sporting groups that articulate service levels and responsibilities between both parties. When you go to the Hilltops website, the new website, the brand new website, you can actually see there's an agreement to use council's recreational facilities. In there are a number of clauses there, one of them which says that the applicant will occupy and use the facility at its own risk and releases the council to the full extent permitted by law from all claims and demands resulting from accident, damage, loss, blah, 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 goes on. I'm just wondering what, and that form was actually dated, I looked at the bottom of it, it was dated 2017, I think. Was a pretty old form. I'm just wondering why the statement would be made that we don't have those agreements when clearly this is on the website. Are these agreements not being used, advertised to the community, not being used by staff? Is that the case? Otherwise, how could Councillor Statmiller's question get a response that we don't have a form, we've got to make one up? Sorry, I'll paraphrase it, that response. How can that be?
I'd imagine that's going to be taken on notice.
Yes. Certainly a written response is required.
Yep. Very valid point, Councillor Armstrong. Well picked.
Sorry to be frustrating, but I would also like to draw attention to the second paragraph, and I missed it, page 386, and it's one of the reasons I've been so notified about the causeway, apart from the fact is that it went from a good alignment, a perpendicular alignment, to a 30-degree alignment with a new causeway, and I think that needs to be looked at. The causeway now, there is not a straight run to it. I think it's actually a dangerous alignment.
Thank you for that commentary and feedback, Councillor. On that note, I'm going to put the works report. All those in favour?
Aye. Again?
Councillor Armstrong's against accepting it. I'm pretty sure I know why. Yep. 21242, the action summary report. And the recommendation that Council note the status of the action plan. Moved Councillor Horton, thank you. Seconded Councillor Manchester, thank you. Any questions, councillors, before I put it? No, I'll put that report. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you, councillors. Takes me over to correspondence for information. And it's the media releases as their council and the recommendation. I'm going to move in a second. I move Councillor Horton. Seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Next one I have is committee reports requiring an action. 21244, the Youngtown Band. Move Councillor Walker. Seconded Councillor Horton. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you, councillors. Takes me over to 21245, committee reports requiring no action. Move Councillor Rolls, seconded Councillor Horton. Councillor Rolls, question for you.
Yes, Mr Mayor, looking through this, just a bit concerned. I looked at the Country Mayors Association of New South Wales and looking at their general meeting and then their AGM. Hilltops seems to be missing from the attendance at both meetings. And
I was an apology for those meetings, that's correct.
Okay, if you're an apology, Mr Mayor, is there an opportunity for the GM to be part of that?
There is. Most councils, it chops and changes. The country mayors meetings I've been to, whether the general manager actually accompanies the mayor, sometimes they go together, sometimes it's just one of the or the two, depending on their workload at home. A lot to do with that, and the general manager here has plenty on his plate. But the Country Mayors Association, yeah, and when things are normal and they have speakers to present and ministers to present, it can be very worthwhile being there. At the times it can be, and I'm pretty sure there's some other mayors in the room would concur that, yeah, it can be a long day out. But some general managers and mayors go and some go separate, so it's a matter for each council. And for the, as I said, I think most of the people I speak to when you talk about it, the general managers there are not, no, they're home, they're busy, they're busy back home, so that's what happens there. I hope that covers that off for you.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just presume that that's a really important time for networking with through the region and with all the other country mayors.
And most certainly is. Councillor.
Mr Mayor, we do know how busy you are. Couldn't the Deputy Mayor fill in there when you can't make it to those meetings?
We can. Any council can organise anything if they like, and what they can do. Council is there's no limitations to that at all.
Thank you.
If the concern is that the councillors think that the council hasn't been represented I pointed out earlier on that my attendance at most meetings, and that includes meetings in
I concur with what you say, Mr Mayor. There's got to be some sort of productivity coming out of it, I would think.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to say any more.
Question, Mr Mayor?
Councillor Armstrong.
Just in regard to the Rye Park Progress Association, I do notice that that there's a request there to ask council about locals being allowed to do village maintenance. I'm just wondering whether that request has actually come to council and whether there's been any movement between council staff and the Rye Park Progress Association in regards to perhaps volunteer status for some of their people.
Who would like to take that, or do we take that on notice, Councillor?
I need to take that on notice. I'm not aware. I didn't attend this meeting, so.
Okay. So someone will follow that up with the right
Mr Mayor, would there be any chance that being followed up tomorrow? I do note that that there'll be a number of people that present in this room tonight that will be attending the Rye Park Progress Association tomorrow night. And I'm quite certain that the lovely lady that's asked that question is likely to ask the same question. If we can get a response as to whether we've received something, at least, I presume we can download some volunteer application forms from the website if we're still using volunteer application forms.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. I'll leave that with staff. On that note,
Mr Mayor, I look forward to Councillor Roll's report turning up in the next business paper in this section. If they're so worried about what meetings are attended and aren't and what reports are in there.
Okay, we'll move on, councillors. I've got a mover and a seconder for that, the committee reports. All those in favour? Thank you, councillor. It's unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to, I think I've missed a page, councillors. Bear with me. 245 to 2 questions with notice, and there are nil. No. There I'm coming to. Notice the motion nil, and now we come to the 2 late items that are there. Mine have fell out of the paperwork. Where are we? There we are. First one being, a matter we talked about before, yep, 21251 TRESILLIAN Park naming. There's a little report there, councillors, and a list of A, B, C and Ds, and the proposal that was been previously handed to council is on the back of that page. So,
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move a motion.
Councillor Armstrong, the floor's yours.
That Council 1 adopt the name Bellhaven Inclusive Play Space for the newly developed inclusive play space located at TRESILLIAN Park, Young. And 2, Council requests that Variety New South Wales provide approval to brand the play space a Variety Livy's Place. And 3, that signage be installed at the location identifying the park name, play space name, and where approval of Variety New South Wales has been forthcoming, the branding.
I'd be happy to second that for you, Councillor Armstrong. That's, and I think has Deirdre been provided with that. Could that go up on the board, please? There we go, councillors. It's on the. We better name it before it's worn out because, by gee, it's popular. Yeah. The kids love it. Councillor Rose.
I agree with you. It's I'm down there on a regular basis with some of the little angels. Is there a requirement for it to go to the public, or it's just convention that has happened in the past?
Yeah.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if we want to have it located geographically, it must go to the geographic names board, and through that there is a process as part of, and some of that is involving consultation as well.
Through Mr Mayor, so the answer to that is no, but as the options there is, you can send it out to public if you so deem. So there's no requirement for it to go out, but other than the stipulation that the director just talked about, the geographical stipulation. But that was one of the options before you that you could vote to push it out.
Do we have a second?
We do. I seconded it. Yep.
Just question for the mover. Could you please just provide us with more information with Part B? Why that? I thought Variety Club hadn't had much to do with it in the end, that we were not including that. Are you specifically wanting to include their name there?
The motion is proposing to have the play space branded as a Livy's Place, but actually named after the philanthropic society that was the Belhaven Special School, I suppose. Clearly, there's a great link there. My reading of the current legislation, this proposal is consistent with clause 6.1 of the legislation and the GNB's guidelines. We are not renaming the geographical location of anything. Tresillian Park is Tresillian Park. It's named after one of the forefathers of Young. What we are doing is effectively applying a name to the play space, the equipment, in much the same way as a farmer may name his tractor or his header or his dog or some other piece of equipment that he may have. So the association with Variety New South Wales, I think, needs to be acknowledged. Livy's Places are fantastic facilities that exist throughout Australia, and I commend Variety for getting behind those. However, in this instance, I believe it's appropriate that the incredible contribution that Belhaven School and the supporters of Belhaven School have made to inclusivity for children is far and above the best reason to name this playground that way.
And through me, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Armstrong, Councillor Rolls.
Can I just add a point? I was actually on the committee for this, and Variety and Livy's Place had quite an input into the design and the discussion. And also, I think the fact that the brand, as Councillor Armstrong has said, it's known throughout almost Australia. And so families look for playgrounds that are actually Livy's Place. So in that sense, I support.
Thank you.
Fully your name.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls. Councillor Horton, before I put it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Armstrong's been on local government in this part of the world for 42 years. I'm not familiar at all with Belhaven. I am with the park because I was there a couple of years ago.
Speaker on Councillor Horton, please.
Oh, sorry. I was at the opening the other day at the Tresillian Park, but I'm just saying that Councillor Armstrong has 42 years local experience. And as I said, Belhaven, I don't know Belhaven, nothing about him. I'd be guided by Councillor Armstrong. I don't know Belhaven. Why would I? I've only been here 12 years. And not in Young. So I would support Councillor Armstrong's views on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. On that note, unless someone wants to speak against the motion, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you, councillors. That's unanimous. If all projects came off and it took a while, but were as popular as that, that'd be fantastic. 21252, Capital Works Update. There's a late report there, councillors, and a recommendation. We'll receive and note the report. And could I get a move and a second first? Councillor Horton moved it. Councillor Manchester seconded. Thank you, Councillor Manchester. I dare say there'll be questions before I put it. Councillor Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, to the extent that was pointed out to me by the Director during the meeting, and that there is no report on Murrumbula Creek, there's certainly on the Gantt chart here some details, but I request that we get Murrumbula Precinct going and get some temporary play equipment in place there if we can't get the project completed, extending out to December 2022. I thank the Director for at least having it on the list.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Any other questions in regard to that report, councillors? If not, I'm going to put it. All those in favour?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Takes care of that one. That takes me to item number 15, which is confidential matters, and I'll ask someone to move, and secondly, we move into close, please. Councillor Manchester, thank you. Councillor Armstrong, second it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary. Okay, thank you, councillors. We've dealt with our business that was in closed council. Just before we leave, I'd once again like to thank everybody who's been part of inaugural Hilltops Council. As I said before, it at times been testing for everyone, and as Councillor Flannery noted early on, it can take its toll on families as well. So, and I don't think at times the councillors get the appreciation from the community that they realise what goes into being actually a councillor. And while I look forward to the elections coming up and 13 candidates, it is most disappointing that there wasn't 23 candidates. But nominations are open, nominations closed as 13, so the public get to vote with those 13 people. So I wish everyone who's re-nominated the best of luck. Stay safe, and now we'll go back into the reports that was dealt with in closed council. Thank you, Mr. GM.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In closed session, report 15.2-21/247 Four Bridges funding update. Council resolved unanimously to receive and note the report. Report 15.3-21/248 Roberts Park and Harden Pool Lighting Upgrade Project. Council resolved A, to receive and note the report, B, endorse the nomination of funding historically expended from the Stronger Communities allocation for Roberts Park and Harden Pool Lighting, which was utilised on Jugion Pool upgrades. C, endorse the allocation of revenue funds from 1055555 Jugion Pool Small Pools Filtration to the amount of, for an amount to the Roberts Park Lighting Project. D, endorse the Roberts Park and Harden Pool Lighting is de-scoped to exclude the Harden Pool Lighting works and all available funds be expended on Roberts Park Lighting. E, endorse the current appointment of the contractor to recommence the works for the Roberts Park Lighting component only. And F, delegate authority to the General Manager to execute all necessary documentation associated with the recommencement of the contract. The next report that was resolved, 15.4-21/247 award of quotation pool investigations. It was resolved that A, receive and note the report on pool investigations. B, award the work for pool investigations to the supplier. D, delegate authority to the General Manager to execute all necessary documentation associated with the awarding of this contract and expend funds as required within current budgets. Then we came to 15.5-21/250 General Manager's Performance Review 2020/2021 and Performance Agreement 2021/2022. It was resolved that A, endorse the General Manager Performance Review for 2021, B, acknowledge the value of achievements made by Mr. Anthony O'Reilly during the review period, and C, endorsed the attached General Manager's Performance Agreement for 2021 and 2022 term, including one additional key performance requirement. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager, and that concludes our council meeting for tonight, and being the last council meeting of this council. So take care, everyone, and I'll officially close the meeting now. Councillor Horton's got his hand in there. Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd just like to pass on a few congratulations to the Mayor.
Oh, no,
he took on a tough job. You can grant away there. We're used to that. He took on a tough job. Not just an ordinary mayor's job. He had to deal with amalgamation. And as far as I'm concerned, he's been a strong and gutsy leader, an all-inclusive leader. And above all, in my view, he's very fair, honest, and an ethical leader. Well done, Brian.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
And you can clap.
Close. Close this close. Close. Yep. Closed.